Hi everyone! In this module we're going to use those molecules that we just learned about and use them to build more complex structures called organelles and cells. Cells are diverse and complex structures in the body and can vary in their functions. To understand how the body is built and functions, we need to learn about some of that diversity. Keep in mind that much of the cellular differences will be taught in each of the later modules, but this module will give you the foundation to understanding cells. Before we dive into Module 3, I want to remind you that there is a detailed list of assignments and their due dates in the Orientations Resources folder. If you have not printed that yet, you should do so. It will only list items that are graded, so don't forget to use the class schedule that's included in your syllabus as the overall plan for the semester. You can always double check that an assignment transferred from Connect by looking in the Grades tab on D2L. If you have any questions, let me know. Now let's get on to Module 3. You're going to navigate to the Content tab and then scroll down to Module 3 Cells. You'll notice that we have our 3 folders here. Make sure that you look through everything in the Resources folder. Don't miss the O&Os, examples of short answer questions, and the notes. You've all been doing a really great job sharing questions, answers, and study tips with each other in the Q&A discussion board. You are not alone in this class. All of you combined have a tremendous amount of knowledge and study skills that can help all of you succeed. Keep up the great work helping out your fellow classmates and using them as a resource for your own success. Print off or download your outcomes and objectives and practice answering them as if they are test questions, because these are your study guide for the test. Don't forget about your short answer test questions. These are examples of essays that I'm giving you ahead of time that you can work on with your notes and your textbook and figure out the answers and practice it before you go take the test. Now, as we move into the to-do folder, remember to always complete each item in this folder in order. Assignments that will be graded in this module are listed at the top with their due dates. Use that to help you stay on track. You're watching this video right now, which is what makes your test visible later. Again, your lectures are built into these web pages. So when you click on this web page, this is going to include any lecture material related to cell membranes. There's a little introduction, and make sure that you read these because I wrote them and there are a lot of helpful tips in there. There's a video on the cell membrane by Crash Course. Then there's a tool that you'll want to download and use to summarize molecular movement during my lecture here. There's a video on osmosis and water potential by the Amoeba sisters, and then I walk you through tonicity and how tonicity affects osmosis, which is the movement of water across membranes. So that covers your cell membrane material. Then you'll go back to your to-do folder, and then you'll work down to the next item. You may want to stop and do the reading on cell membranes here. Remember that you can choose to answer the questions in the reading first and then just go back to a section of reading if you are unsure of the answer. Then you'll have a couple of virtual labs on diffusion. Next, you'll move into cell structures. The lecture material on cell structures is located in this webpage. This is a really cool animation taking you right into a cell to look at the cell structures. Bozeman Science is a little bit more of a traditional lecture format like what I do. So if you like that type of format, you may really like this lecture here. He walks you through the different structures within this cell image and what they do. Then you'll move back to your to-do folder. There's a recommended reading on cell structures. Again, you can do the questions for practice and just read when you get stuck. And then you move into DNA. You'll notice that in every module, the topics are broken into smaller chunks so you can focus on one thing at a time. So make sure you understand different types of movement across cell membranes, for example, before you start learning cell structures. Take the time to review each topic before moving on to the next. An effective practice might be to break your study sessions up by topic. In other words, don't try to sit down for 3 hours and burn through 3 web pages of lecture material. If you have a 3-hour block set aside, work on one topic, practice it, quiz yourself on it, take a short break, then come back to the next topic. For something like cell structures, this is a really great topic to build a matching game where you have cards or pieces of paper that have the names of structures and other ones with the functions on them, and then shuffle them up and try to play a matching game with them. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. You could draw a cell, color the different structures and label them and what they do. Just make your learning interactive in some way. Just reading things over and over again is not a very effective way of learning and remembering. Then we get into DNA, RNA, and the cell cycle. There's a short video here about the cell cycle. Then you see an unlabeled diagram of a cell cycle. I would recommend drawing this in your notes and practicing filling it in with what is happening during the lifespan of this cell. Draw it out multiple times. During the cell cycle, mitosis is broken up into 4 smaller sections here called prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Everything else in the cell cycle is called interphase, which means that it is between the phases of cell division. The first part of interphase is G1. Then we have S phase, which is where you copy your DNA. And then you have G2, which gets you ready for the next cell division or mitosis. Again, draw this and practice it a few times to really get that to sink in. Then we will dive into mitosis. Once we understand the cell cycle, we dig in deeper into the part of the cell cycle where cell division occurs. When you are creating somatic cells or body cells, such as replacing skin cells, your cells go through a process of cloning themselves called mitosis. And from there, we'll focus in on the structure of DNA, how DNA replicates, and then how you read the instructions on the DNA to make proteins. Now, the protein production will be in a separate website, which I'll show you in just a minute. This is a fairly complex process where you're using lots of different protein enzymes to break apart and unzip the DNA, and then reassemble those new copies of nucleic acid. For this class, you only need to understand the structure of DNA and then the basic process of how DNA replicates. So you need to take a strand of DNA and copy it into a new complementary strand. You do not need to know all of the enzymes involved. All right, let's jump back here to our to-do folder. Then we're going to move into protein synthesis. Once a cell is fully functioning and it's going about its everyday business of living, then it's going to need to read the instructions on the DNA and use those instructions or recipes to build proteins. Here's kind of your basic analogy of how you can think about protein synthesis. You have your recipe in the DNA, which is a gene, and you have a chef who's going to assemble the protein. So that's your rRNA, or your ribosomes. You have to have a photocopy of the recipe because you don't want to ruin the original copy of the recipe. I mean, Grandma gave me that. Like, literally Grandma gave me that copy. So you don't want to ruin it. You're going to make a photocopy of that recipe, which is your mRNA, or messenger RNA, and then you need somebody in the kitchen to help bring ingredients. That's going to be your tRNA. So use this analogy to help you understand the basic process. Now in this video, I'm going to walk you through the process with a drawing. I would strongly recommend that you draw the process along with me and then afterwards practice drawing it a few times yourself. I guarantee you, if you physically draw this process out multiple times, it will sink in much better than if you just watch me do it once or twice. Then once you have the process down, then you've got a couple of videos here, one by Crash Course and one by the Amoeba Sisters, that are fun and can give you a visual to go along with the story that I just created for you. Like DNA replication, you need to understand all of the steps and the parts involved. You do need to understand the different types of RNA and what they do. You do not need to know all of the protein enzymes that are involved. That can get really complicated really fast, and we aren't going to get into that much depth. So focus on the types of RNA and the basic process, and you should be set. Now, once you've done all of that, you're going to leave this section and go back into the to-do folder where you're going to find a DNA function worksheet. We were in this protein synthesis webpage here. Then you'll see there's a DNA function worksheet that you can use to walk through the different parts of DNA replication and protein synthesis. Once you've done that, then right below that an answer key will appear. So you actually have to go to this worksheet and do it before that answer key is going to appear here. There is another recommended reading on DNA, and then I created a video covering an overview of cells. So it might even be a good review to listen to while you're on a drive or you're mowing the lawn or doing laundry or whatever, just to kind of recap. Then if you're listening to it and I come across a topic that you don't feel as comfortable with, then maybe stop what you're doing and watch that part of the video to review. I do have here then some additional videos that you might find helpful. These are not required. I used to have these in the discussion board, but then I moved them here to make it a little easier to find. So these are optional videos that you might find interesting or that might help clarify some of the topics that we're covering in this module. So just scroll down through these different resources, and if something strikes your fancy, then take a look at it. There's a really interesting video here that walks through what coronavirus is more from a physiological standpoint. It talks about the plasma membrane here. A student actually in a previous class found these rap lectures that they thought were funny and helped material stick in their brains. There's an Amoeba Sisters video on cell transport. Then we get into the DNA and cell division. There is a nice simulation comparing mitosis and meiosis, and keep in mind for this class you only need to understand the phases and process of mitosis. Again, you do not have to know the enzymes involved. Since meiosis is how your body produces gametes, or sperm and eggs, meiosis will be covered in the second half of A&P. So you'll learn that during the reproductive system. Then there's a nice video here showing you an animation of cell division in the cell cycle. And then at the bottom here you'll find some additional resources that you might like. If you like them, bookmark them in your web browser. Then you'll have access to them later or even when the class ends. Let's jump back to the to-do folder. Here you will find your required cell assignment on Connect. Be sure to click Submit and not just save and exit when you are done with the assignment. You can also check your work for each question in Connect and revise your answers as you go through the assignment. I would recommend at least doing this for any questions you are not 100% sure of so that you can learn from your mistakes before the test. Once you have finished all of the material and feel comfortable with the topics, you are ready to open up the test and review folder. You will find several optional activities to help you prepare for the test. There are Connect activities, a link to Quizlets, your sample essay questions, and a Kahoot challenge. Your test link will show up right below the Kahoot once you've watched this video. You may use a blank piece of paper during the test to draw up processes and figure out answers, but you must show both sides of the paper to the camera before starting the test. By taking the test, you are agreeing to the policies of academic integrity and will not use any outside materials on the test. If you have any questions as you're working through the cell module, make sure that you reach out to me. Make sure that you reach out to your classmates in the discussion board as well.